1. The mood will change promptly at midnight. I blinked again. That line hadn't been there when I read the invitation before. I was certain of it. I pored over the thick, luxuriously black postcard multiple times, making sure the order of courses was correct. There were no misspellings and so on. I didn't need to memorize it because it was seared into my brain. This was the most important party I'd ever cooked for. I chose to believe it was a stepping stone. Being asked to do a private party of this caliber, it was usually weddings, the occasional brunch. Here and there, someone would hire me to come out on their yacht, to feed them and their drunk, rowdy friends all day. I hated those the most, but they paid well enough to not take them off my service list. Besides, that was where this client found me, supposedly. I'd never spoken to them directly. The correspondence ran through an assistant who wasn't very keen on small talk. The check was big enough that it didn't matter. I hoped it didn't matter. Hoped I wouldn't regret this. I'd made so many concessions from my normal process that a thread of paranoia had been hanging in the fringes of my conscience since the contract was signed. So many I don't usually do this moments that the only normal thing about any of this was my satisfaction as the servers exited the kitchen with heavy platters of carefully, beautifully plated food. Servers I didn't hire. Another deviation. The client had insisted on all their own people, had insisted on a grocery list to send someone else to do the shopping. My first thought was that there was some need or desire to keep the budget down since my fee for doing this last minute was honestly astronomical. Then I saw the house, which I hadn't gotten an address for until the day of, and was tucked away in some ultra-exclusive gated corner of Blackwood I didn't even know existed before this. At the house, when I'd been handed a black chef's coat and hat that were worth more than I'd made in the last quarter, I understood. They weren't keeping the budget down. They were making sure I was up on their level. If I weren't so in awe of it all, maybe I'd be offended. Instead, I happily used the luxury gas range of my dreams, professional quality knives I couldn't even imagine affording, ultra-fresh ingredients from the list I'd provided, some straight from the farm. It was lovely. I immersed myself in the experience, unbothered by the fact that I was there alone. It meant minimal distractions from the work. And now that the last things were plated, the delicate desserts and signature cocktails that had been requested for serving right at the midnight hour, I was technically finished. It had been made clear in my contract that I would not be responsible for cleaning. Staff had descended upon the kitchen in white uniforms and made quick work of it as soon as I sent out the last course. Since I'd only used the tools provided, there was nothing for me to pack. I was about to hunt someone down to be escorted home when I spotted the invitation again, propped up on a little stand. Even though I was done now and the party was in full swing, I'd stopped to look at it, and there was that line. The mood will change promptly at midnight. What the hell did it mean? I looked around the spotless kitchen, and then at the door separating the kitchen from the rest of the opulent modern home. I really should have been finding the driver who'd brought me here, or texting the assistant everything was coordinated through so I could go home. Just go home. The thought echoed in my head, bouncing around like a blaring warning. One I didn't heed. Instead, I pushed through the door. The transition from the kitchen into the party was like stepping into a whole new world. The brief flashes from the servers going in and out were no comparison to the actual atmosphere. It was heady. The music was loud enough to feel, but low enough for conversation. The lights were dimmed to a deep indigo hue, and there was this scent in the air. Not food, though. Maybe the slight smokiness caused the aroma. peppery and syrupy and wicked. I couldn't help myself from breathing it in. Deep. I blinked hard, still taking in my surroundings when I realized everyone was paired off. Well, not always paired. A few small groups of 3, 4. A passing server smirked at me, and I quickly averted my gaze, straight to where a woman was seated, legs wide open, skirt hiked up, on someone's lap. I couldn't look away. Her eyes were closed, maybe? It was hard to tell in the dark. What wasn't hard to see were the hands playing with her exposed nipples, or the man on his knees in front of her, with his head between her legs while she sipped from a glass of champagne. What the hell is this? The question had barely gotten across my mind when I felt eyes on me. The man with handfuls of her tits. He smirked at me, and then, clear as day, without his mouth moving, he asked me a question. "Would you like to taste her too?" What? Confused, I watched as he lowered his head, opened his mouth, and then sank his teeth into her neck. Deep. I watched on bated breath until I saw the trickle of blood. What? I turned away, nearly crashing into another server as I took off, too shocked to bother making sure I was heading in the same direction I'd come from. As I moved, my gaze fell to other sets of people, some in conversation about mundane things, some full-blown fucking, right next to each other. The mood will change promptly at midnight. It was only 12:22. I pushed through another door, sucking in a breath of fresh air that wasn't contaminated by the pheromones and incense and whatever else. I turned to look back at the doorway, just a simple slab, unadorned with anything that might indicate the debauchery happening on the other side, because the guests hadn't needed warning. This had to be what they were here for. I swallowed hard, taking another breath as I took in my surroundings, which were emptier than I would have expected. Eerily. In one direction, floor-to-ceiling windows looked out on a lavish pool area, illuminated only by moonlight. The other direction led to a hall, which was where I took my chances. Semi-public sex, scandalous, sure, but nothing to be too twisted in a bunch about. Biting people, though? Not a little throes of passion nibble, a fucking bite? That was entirely too much. It was past time for me to go. I hoped the hall would connect back to the front entryway I remembered, but it just took me deeper and deeper into the labyrinthian layout of the house. I was right on the verge of doing what I should have done in the first place, texting my contact person, when heavy, fast footsteps caught my attention in the hall. Instant panic rushed through me. The footsteps were getting closer, at a speed that gave me a clear impression whoever was coming my way wouldn't mean me any good. I needed to hide. I tried the door handle closest to me, and when that one didn't budge, tried another, and another. The footsteps were right around the corner when I tried one last door. To my complete relief, it opened. I hurriedly slipped inside, closing it behind me and turning the lock. With my ear pressed to the door, I listened for whoever had been coming. After a moment, muffled laughter carried through the door, accompanied by the indistinct murmurs of at least 2 different people. "Hurry and unlock it," I heard, which made me take a quick step back. But they weren't talking about this door. Definitely another. I heard the opening, the closing, the ensuing silence. I heaved out a sigh of relief. I'd probably hidden for nothing, but still. A soft blue glow behind me pulled my attention behind me to a wall of screens. Security cameras. My gaze flitted around, noting the pool area, the foyer, the kitchen where I'd spent the last hours working, the party. Each screen had multiple angles of whatever room they were in. Knowledge that made an uncomfortable feeling spread across my chest. Was I being watched while I was cooking? I couldn't dwell there long. Other screens pulled my attention. Full-color camera feeds from private rooms, crystal clear enough for feature film. Some were empty. Some weren't. On one screen, a man accompanied by two gorgeous women was getting pegged by a massive dildo while he got head from the other. They were all still in their party clothes. Another screen had a couple on display, both full nude, self-pleasuring on chairs directly across from one another, barely a foot apart, if that much. Something on that screen really pulled my attention, making me step forward for a better view of the puncture wound on her neck.
You know you're not supposed to be in here, right?
I couldn't help the scream that ripped from my throat before I turned around, searching for the source of that admonition. I found it. Him. Tall and imposing, standing right in front of the door, blocking it. I was just looking for the exit, I said, backing up. The man in front of me was beautiful, honestly. Flawless dark skin, glowing in the blue light from the monitors, an aquiline nose, thick brows, impeccably carved jaw, disturbingly black eyes. His full lips quirked into a teasing smile, but his arms remained crossed.
Now, Celeste, you understand why that might not seem like the truth.
How do you know my name? I gasped, taking another step back, a move that brought the backs of my thighs in contact with the edge of the control panel desk. Nowhere else to go.
I know the names of every single person who walks through my door.
My eyebrows shot up. Your door? So, this is your house?
Indeed.
So, you're the one who hired me? I asked. He confirmed with a nod. Fuck. Listen, I'm sorry for being somewhere I'm not supposed to be. I didn't know how I was supposed to get home.
Did you contact Irina?
Irina? The assistant. No, not yet, I admitted, as he finally stepped away from the door, uncrossing his arms to push his hands into the deep pockets of his slacks.
So then, were you really trying to get home? Or is naivete about to get the inquisitive kitty disciplined for her prying?
My eyes went wide. Curiosity killed the cat. Immediately, I shook my head. No, sir, I stammered, not knowing what I needed to say. I just wanted out of whatever fucked up fantasy this was. He continued stalking in my direction.
You sound scared.
I'm alone in a dark room with a stranger, I countered, hoping that stating the obvious would get him to see what I saw.
What's scary about that?
I have no idea what you might do to me.
What do you want me to do to you?
He was right in front of me now, close enough to smell, which felt dangerous. Just like when I'd stepped into that party, I couldn't help breathing in. It was different, though. A clean, smoky sort of bouquet that was hard not to inhale. Impossible, actually. Any response I may have had to the question caught in my throat as he pulled aside my lapel to unzip my chef coat. I was dressed underneath, but it was just a tank top and bra. I couldn't move, couldn't say a word as he pushed the garment off my shoulders. I didn't breathe until he touched me, and when I did, it was deep, gasping breaths as he put his fingers to my throat. 2 fingers held in one spot as he looked me in my eyes.
Calm down.
I did, as if he was more in control of my nervous system than I was. He grabbed me by the wrist with his free hand, placing a big thumb under my palm, holding it there.
How should I punish you?
I blinked. What? His gentle hold on my wrist, the light touch at my neck, changed to vice-like grips.
You trespassed.
His nose touched my nose, lips brushing mine.
You shouldn't have left the kitchen on your own.
I'm sorry, I rushed out, barely able to form the words.
I'm sure you are, gorgeous.
He pulled back enough that I could see the smile spread across his lips, punctuated by a glimpse of perfect white teeth.
Which is why I'll be gentle.
Suddenly, he let me go, took a step back.
Unbutton your pants. Pull them down with your panties. Bend over the panel.
I didn't move. What? A flash of irritation transformed his face from nonchalantly handsome to this sinister sort of sexiness that made me feel hot.
I can punish you here or in front of everyone. Your choice.
My hands went to my buttons without even thinking about it. Pants unbuttoned, unzipped, and yanked down with my panties.
Good girl,
he muttered, moving toward me again.
What was the last part of your instruction?
My mind blanked.
Bend over the panel,
he growled, and I did so immediately. Chose a smooth expanse with no buttons. I didn't get another good girl, though. Instead, he said,
2 more licks, since you want to be insubordinate.
How was that?
2 for talking back, too. You want to keep going?
He asked, and I shook my head. Why? I had no fucking clue. We'd traveled well beyond sense at this point. Nothing could have prepared me for his hand on my ass.
15,
he said, as the sharp smack reverberated through me, forcing me to bite my lip to keep from screaming. I gave up on that by the time he was down to 9. Yes, because it hurt, but more because the pain was good. So completely antithetical to anything that had ever happened to me. Ever.
7,
he droned, after a smack that landed right on my exposed pussy, sending a fresh gush of arousal there. I was humming with pleasure, just waiting on this part to be done so we could get to whatever was next. He had his hand pressed to my back, holding me in place as he worked through the rest of my punishment.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
1 was on my pussy again, and instead of removing his hand after the smack, he sank 2 of those big fingers into me, making me gasp. With just those fingers, he stretched me wide, fucking me faster and faster with them until he'd built his slow cadence to a punishing rhythm.
Open your eyes,
he demanded, so I did. Tension immediately flooded my shoulders when I realized I was looking at myself, bent over the panel. He finger-fucked the anxiety right out of me, though, and made me watch from changing angles, close-ups of his fingers disappearing in me, his thumb pressing to my clit, my face, mouth hanging open in pleasure, a side view of my body rocking in response to his hand, my hips reflexively moving backward to meet him, my thighs shaking, back arching as he made me come. I yelled myself hoarse. I was still bent over the panel, watching as he pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, cleaning first me, then his hands with it. Instead of discarding it, he stuffed it into his pocket, then directed me to stand. My knees were weak. He helped me pull up my pants and underwear, put the chef's coat back on me, wordlessly, led me back to the kitchen, wordlessly. Irina was waiting.
I'm sure I don't have to explain the level of discretion Elias expects.
Correct? She asked. When I glanced behind me, he was already gone. I nodded.
Good.
She smiled. gesturing for me to follow her. "Let's get you home." Still in a daze, I followed her out to where a car was waiting. Once I was buckled into the back seat, she reached in, handing me a black sealed envelope. "Thank you for your service tonight." She closed the door. Immediately, the car took off. Before I could even gather my thoughts, we were back in a familiar area of the city before I could pull together enough brain cells to open the envelope. It was a check for twice the amount of the contract I'd signed. "Holy shit," I whispered, reading the numbers over and over until they, along with the steady hum of the car, lulled me to sleep. Next thing I knew, I was being dropped off at my front door. The car lingered until I was safely inside before pulling off. I dropped everything, my cell phone, keys, the check, off at the table by the door, frowning as I glimpsed myself in the mirror. I looked like I'd just cooked for a party of 30. I immediately started stripping stuff off, heading to the shower as I replayed everything in my head. That shit had to be a dream. There was no way any of that craziness had actually happened. Maybe all of that was from my nap on the way home. That made a hell of a lot more sense than literally anything else. I took a deep breath, settling it in my mind. It was just a dream. It was just a dream. It was just a dream.